Hey guys, Trevor Morris here. Welcome to Ask Me Anything.
Hi, Trevor. This is Michael Levine, one of the people who's known Trevor the longest in Los Angeles. We were friends before either of us lived here, meeting through the internet somehow. I'm a composer as well. One of the things that I have always found that I appreciated about Trevor's style is that he will use these asymmetrical structures, particularly odd numbers of bars in a phrase. And for me, it's not only a hallmark of his style, it's one of the things that makes it enormously effective. And Trevor, could you expand on that idea?
Hey Michael, thanks for that great question. Michael Levine and I, like you mentioned, we go back a long way. We've been through many trials and tribulations of our careers together. He's such a talented composer, has such a unique voice. He's also a fantastic violinist. And I have to admit that, I don't know if you even knew this, Michael, but our method of working together, Michael is my go-to violinist for anything that I do, for solo violin, for score. And the great thing about Michael is he brings a composer's mentality to performing as a studio musician. But moreover, back in the day, we used to have studios in the same building, more or less, and I would just send him a MIDI file and you know a little description of what I wanted, and he would start doing stuff. And eventually, we became long distance or not in person in terms of working together. Now, before this, every time I hired a studio musician, a cellist or whatever, I would be there and I would supervise and I would produce or conduct, or not really conduct, but just produce a performance and be there for the birth of it. And then at some point when time gets tight, I would just say to Michael, hey, are you up to recording some stuff? Like if I send you the track and just do stuff and send it back to me. This may not seem like a groundbreaking notion right now, but at the time, it wasn't really that many musicians that were doing this. And so Michael and I began this way of working where I would send him the track, we'd have a Skype call or something and give him the brief. And I would just say, here's the kind of things I'm looking for. And he would just do 6 or 10 or 12 passes. My assistant's gonna just pop it into Cubase. I can go through and quickly, and I have a channel preset, a track preset for Michael, exactly the way I like his stuff to sound. He's been on so many of my scores. I think some of his best work was my score to Immortals, where he brought this just ancient, I don't know what he brought to the table, but it was money, in my opinion. Anyway, if you guys need a studio violin guy, Michael's your dude. So back to your question about my hallmark. Well, that's a cool word. I grew up really writing music in the computer generation, from the early mid 80s up till now. So I have written music on pencil and paper a couple of times, but it's not really my generation of composing. This is the new, for us, the new way of getting our ideas out. And so I found myself kind of, computers, as Michael would say, computers tend to want you to write in 4/4 at 120 BPM in C major. That's where they're most happy. They're not really great. It takes a lot of effort to switch to odd and asymmetrical meters, which I think Cubase handles brilliantly. In my opinion, it's been a while since I've been on Logic, because I was on Logic before Cubase. Cubase does an amazing job of that. So what happened is there's a difference between writing in an odd meter, say 7/8, that's a feel, and asymmetrical metering, which is really, the bottom line is, what it really is for me is a chance to create the feeling of rubato, but still to click. Once you start recording with an orchestra and you start going free time, actually now I do that more, I'm more comfortable with conducting free time, but earlier in my career I wasn't. You want the orchestra to be on the click, and if you start to do really wild tempo changes, or even worse, subtle tempo changes to try to make things feel rubato, like if you're at 100 and all of a sudden it goes down to 7 BPM to somehow feel rubato and then back to it, it's such an executional nightmare. So your choices are go free time or have some sort of weird, crazy tempo map. So what I would do is I would just naturally write, let's say I'm in 4/4, for example, I would write at the end of the phrase a 6/4 bar. What it is 4/4 with just a little, and then back to it again. A lot of this comes out of my style of writing, which is depending on the cue, I will sometimes just literally put my hands on the keyboard and look up and just play. I don't care if I clam, I don't care what happens. What I'm doing is I'm reacting to the cut, I'm reacting to the flow of it, and I'm just sort of feeling out where I feel the performances are. And then I get some shape of something and I go, okay, that's not bad, let's work with it. And then I go back and I re-meter it, and it's like, holy moly, it's 4/4, 5/4, 4/4, 6/4, 3/8, whatever. I'll show you some examples here on some of my scores. But the idea came out of the feeling of using a computer, which is kind of how I learned, to feel rubato, to feel like it's got some breath to it, or it's got some stillness to it, or it's got some, it's not just the same thing all the time. Again, different than writing in, say, 7/4 all the time, or 7/8, or whatever, but going back and forth and back and forth. The problem is, as I entered into the live concert scene around the world conducting my music, is now I'm on the podium conducting completely free of click, live with an orchestra, and every bar is a different meter. It's like, why did I do that? But it's become my way of helping the sequence breathe, to help orchestral stuff feel like it's got some sense of it being free flowing, even though it's actually not. All it is just extended bars and reduced bars and appoggiaturas and things like this that are all done through very precise metrics, but it feels like rubato, if that makes sense. So here, check this out. So here's one of my scores. This is, this is from a Sura. Let's see what we got here. So here we go. 4/4, 5/4, 6/4, 3/4, 7/4. 4/4, 5/4, 6/4, 3/4, 7/4. Obviously that was a phrase I was going for. 4/4, 6/4 this looks like a bar for break. Picking up to the next thing. So there's a great example of how my scores, almost all my scores look this way. It's insane. But the feeling is on the performance, whether it be a crescendo or more likely a decrescendo, and then a little pickup bar that goes into the next phrase. And so all those things are generated more from me writing. I don't meter it out and then fit the music to the metering. You know what I mean? It's more letting myself feel. I mean, the click is going on in the background, or sometimes I do it free time, whatever. But it's the idea of it feeling like it breathes and it goes where it wants to go. And I'm not confined to 4/4. I'm not confined to whatever meter I have, And it's also one of my styles. One of my things is a fancy word is retonicization, which basically means whatever note you're on could be the next key of the next bit. You know what I mean? So those two things together, retonicization, I think is the term. I'm not a PhD composer, but the idea of, say you're playing in C minor and you end up on, a G, well, that could be the beginning of G minor, a new key, and every note is the beginning of something possible at a different key. Between that and being able to write in these asymmetrical meter patterns, it really frees it up. It really gets it out of the computer. And even if it's not being recorded with an orchestra, which let's face it, I mean, 80% of what I do doesn't get a live orchestra. It goes to air right out of the box. It's got to feel great, sound great, all that kind of stuff. So here, let's look at another one. So let's look at the Locust Attack. This is from Emerald City. Oh, that one's not too bad. Yeah, some of these are just pickup bars leading into picture moments. And then, again, there's a great example right there of just 4/4 up and down, and the 6/4 up and down in bar 24 is really a 4/4 with a rubato at the end, and then back into the next bit, if that makes sense. These ones aren't too bad, actually. I asked my orchestrator, David, to pick some. There are a couple that are way more intense than this, but there you go. So there's a 4/4 bar with a little crescendo into the next one, stuff like that. So these actually aren't that bad. But you get the idea. I think that any way we can breathe life into a sequence, any way we can breathe life into a computer, I'm a quantize the top and the tail of every note. None of my sequences are free time. Everything is on the beat. That's just how I learned. And I know I've worked with composers who don't do that. They want their sequence to feel more free, so everything is not quantized, which is cool. I get it, until you need to go to orchestration, then it's a friggin' nightmare. So part of this is playing a little bit of defense that I know that when this goes to the orchestrator, there's going to be no questions about what's what. And it keeps everything neat and tidy. And for me, it feels enough like it's free that I can get away with it. And now when I conduct orchestra, I will say, hey guys, take up the click from bar 20 to bar 30, and let's just feel that moment. That's such a privilege to have an orchestra to do that with. So even if I decide I want to free time something with the orchestra, I still click it out. I still have it in case it doesn't go that way. We have that rubato feel done through metering. So the live concert scene's a whole other animal though, because it's just like, it's hard enough. They're working with 4 or 5 or 6 conductors in the course of an evening, including the house conductor, which is usually Diego Navarro, the amazing conductor that he is. And now they got to every meter look up at me and make sure we're on the beat. There is no click. It's live, right? So I've got myself in a little bit of trouble that way, but it works for me. So thanks, Michael, for that observation of how I write. And I think if you guys have never tried this, you can simply go in, if you write something that's all in 4/4, at the end of every phrase, insert a 6/4 bar and have 2 extra notes, 2 extra beats, and a little decrescendo. This is not groundbreaking, but I think doing it in a computer setting where everything is quantized and is to the beat, and being able to execute that to an orchestrator, to an orchestra date under the extreme deadline of big projects and big movies where you're going to Abbey Road and there's no time to fuck around. I implement my strategy for sequencing and writing is to leave breadcrumbs for my orchestrator. I do this no matter what, whether it's going to orchestra or not. It's part of my craft, my discipline, to make sure that should I write a cue that never had an orchestra budget, and all of a sudden the director goes, oh my God, this is amazing, we have to hire an orchestra tomorrow. It could go from me to my orchestrator without any modifications, and he'd be like, okay, I got it. I know exactly what we're doing here. So that's just the way that I think. Everything that I do is written for the idea of being performed with live musicians, whether I get them or not. So I think that the 2 things, if these are not familiar concepts for you or for your young composer who never thought about this, try it. Try write a tune. I don't care what it is. Happy birthday. I don't give a shit. Play a tune, and then every random note, that's the new key of that, and play that in the next phrase. You know what I mean? Not a circle of fifths kind of thing. Just kind of free associate. It frees up the tonic of the key to be whatever you want it to be. And then try the idea of writing in 4/4, and after, let's say it's a 4-bar phrase up and down, at the end of the 4th bar, make that 6/4 or 7/4, and let that decrescendo come down, and then next phrase, and then 6/4 again or 7/4 again. I think it works for me as a way to make the music breathe and still know, which is in my DNA, I can't help it, to still know that it's actionable to get to an orchestrator and get to the live musician and get to the biggest stage in the world with absolute clarity without me having to be on the phone and talk someone through it. That's what I call leaving breadcrumbs, or I leave little, half tremolo, half natural in the MIDI part, rather than have to sequence it twice, and stuff like this. I could do a whole video in the language of interpretation from the composer to the orchestrator, just little things that I've learned to help make that go smoother, because inevitably it's usually at midnight or 3 in the morning when you finish the cue and the orchestrator's got his night goggles on. But anyway, hope that answers your question. Thanks, Michael. Again, if you guys haven't heard Michael Levine's music, check it out. And he's a fantastic studio musician and an all-around nice guy. And I appreciate that, Michael. I appreciate that observation. I kind of forget that I do it sometimes, but I do think it's effective in a way to help your computer breathe. So there's your little insight into that. So thanks again. This Ask Me Anything is great. It's one of the highlights of my day, doing these things, answering your questions. So ask away. But if you want to ask me a question, DM me with a video, okay? All right, guys, if you like this, if you get any value out of this video at all, I'd love it if you would just like and subscribe to said YouTube channel. I would appreciate it. Till next time, take care, stay safe, and asymmetrical metering. Cheers.